Welcome to the Dork Forest. Jackie and her pals will never bore us. Shameless confessions
about our obsession
will make us laugh and smile. So let's explore the Dork Forest and dork out for a while.
Hi, it's Jackie Cation, and you are listening to The Dork Forest. The website's JackieCation.com, dorkforest.com, thedorkforest.com if you like a determiner. Let's do the credits. Patrick Brady's going to fix this audio and video. Vilmos works on JackieCation.com, and Mike Rickberg sang the song with his wife, Sarah. He composed it, and he will sing his version of the Mexican hat dance at the end of this show. Thank you so much for listening to The Dork Forest. Here's a scoop. I'm doing stand-up online. A lot of Zoom shows will eventually go back on the road. Sign up for my email list. It's easy to get off. It's harder to get on than it is to get off. And no harm, no foul. If ever bored, JackieCation.com, sign up for the email list. You'll find out about my weekly Zoom shows and stand up on the road eventually. You may donate to the show if you would like. I would like. Sure, I would. There's PayPal, Jackie at JackieCation.com, and there is a PayPal button on both DorkForest.com and JackieCation.com. And there's Venmo, if you like Venmo, Jackie-Cation, oddly enough. If you have listened to all of the shows, go to dorkforest.bandcamp.com, I think. The Dork Forest has a Bandcamp page. You can listen to a lot of ones that are free from pre-2009 when I started pre-recording. And then there's live episodes that cost me a couple of bucks, so I charge you a couple of bucks. There's also some stand-up. There's a story album that's very exciting there. And other than that, I have a lot of merch in my garage. Feel free to order if you know anybody who doesn't have any CDs or the DVD. And you can follow me everywhere at Jackie Cation. Let's get into the show. Hey, it's Jackie Cation. I'm in my living room. I am not in my living room. I used to record. This is like 2 years ago I used to record in my living room. I'm currently in my garage, people. I'm in my garage. I'm in the tiny room of requirement, which is a room that when things are needed, this is the room we come to. And it is my guest. I just did his podcast, which is it called Demond Does?
Yes.
Do you know what I called it? 6 questions. That's what I called it.
Okay.
But Demond Does, DEMOND, DOES, Demond Does. And it's at Demond Does on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, all the things. It is a podcast where you ask the same 6 questions of different people, correct?
Yes, it is.
And I was on it, and I answered those questions, and we meandered, and I liked you, and I said, would you like to do the Dork Forest? And so here you are now in the Dork Forest.
And I was honored and accepted, and here we are.
Right. And you also have a nerd debate show called DisputedPod.com. Disputed, spelled like disputed. Pod, spelled like pod, P-O-D. And it's like Harry Potter versus Luke Skywalker, or what was the one you just did?
Daffy versus Donald Duck.
Oh, those two. Dueling pianos.
Yes, it was quite the extravaganza.
A throwdown. So, but speaking of a throwdown, it's going to be another episode. I'm still trying to get my mind around this dorkdom. It's wrestling, professional wrestling. It isn't Olympic wrestling, right, Demond?
No, it is. There have been Olympic wrestlers in professional wrestling.
Okay.
But that there is a crossover. There's more of it now than there used to be.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that. That is actually a fun fact. Who was in the Olympics and then became a professional wrestler?
The one that most people will know is Kurt Angle. He won the gold medal in '96. I want to say.
Okay, and his name is Angle, Angle.
Yes, like a perfect wrestling name.
That really is Kurt Angle. 96 Olymp. Did he win like a gold or anything? Or
he won gold, yeah.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah, won gold with a broken neck, which gets made. It's become cliche now in wrestling. But no, he really did. He really did do it with a broken neck. That's not hyperbole or anything. That's truth.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's huge. That is huge. What is
Did he change his name to something more wrestling-ish?
He actually, it's unusual. It's even more unusual now than it used to than when he did it. But he's Kurt Angle, so I mean they just went by his real name. Yeah,
right. He didn't have to call himself the Flying Weasel or something like that. Or is he a good guy?
He did both, and he did both very well. Honestly, depending on who you ask, since I've been watching it, which has been since probably 80.
Okay, since the 80s you've been watching, because I watched it in the 70s and it was dumb, but my grandmother loved it so much, and I was like, it doesn't seem real, and she's like, stop talking to me, and so I did about wrestling, because I'm from my hometown. The Crusher is from my hometown. Oh, yeah. And so they just built a statue to the Crusher.
Really?
In South Milwaukee, Wisconsin, with him holding a quarter barrel of beer, because that was traditionally how he worked out. He would lift quarter barrels of beer. Because he's from Wisconsin. He was weaned on Pabst and Ho-Hos. It was prior to it being quite. It was more of a caricature than it was. I don't know what it. Would you say it was more caricature-y in the 70s and 80s?
It still is.
Okay, I think more of the same. Just kind of it's just shinier now.
Yes, it's shinier. It's got prettier lights. There's a lot more money behind it, and it's fancier.
The money,
it's very it's a lot fancier now, especially when you look at the one that most people think of when they talk about wrestling, World Wrestling Entertainment, or the WWF when we were coming up.
Okay. Is that still happening, the World Wrestling? Because I know there's always drama, actual drama behind the scenes with all that money. Like there seems to be a real legal fights and people genuinely angry.
Go ahead. Which angle are you referring to? Because there's lots of
right. Well, because there's the real business of wrestling, and there's the fake drama of the written storylines of the wrestlers. So there's the real drama of a bunch of super rich people fighting about different words of wrestling and who owns different things and how to get it on TV or pay-per-view or whatever. And then there's let's talk about the real drama first. Like what is the current who's the big name in wrestling? Is it World Wrestling Federation?
The big name right now is World Wrestling Entertainment.
WWE. Okay.
It's honestly, I wish I could remember exactly how he put it, but a friend of mine, he's a professional wrestler and he also does stand-up.
Okay.
And he compared wrestling to stand-up, and when he explained it to me, I'm like, oh, I get it now. I mean, there's a lot of it's cliquish. You've got infighting. You got to worry about you're worried about your spot on the card or on the show. It's all you've got your buddies, but it's still individual, and you've got not only you fighting each other. I mean, honestly, you're also fighting the promoter to not only get your money or get what you deserve.
Okay, so it's set up like clubs, like stand-up clubs, and there's bigger venues and all that. Oh, that's an interesting way to describe it.
That's a little like the politics of it is similar. Is how I put it. Like so instead of the clubs, the clubs, you go on to the arenas, and everybody goes to the arena, but everybody's fighting for a handful of spots on the show.
Right. And there's levels as you come up, right? There's different, there's like sort of A-ball or whatever, the minors or just in stand-up talk, it's one-nighters and four-wall and rooms, just sort of smaller venues versus bigger venues. And yeah.
In wrestling, we call that the independents.
Okay.
Because they're smaller. They're basically smaller shows around the world, really. And the independents are basically not from the bigger companies. So it's very similar in that way, yeah.
Okay, so right now, the big dogs, the people who own the means of production, shall we say, in capitalist terms, is World Wrestling Entertainment.
Yes.
And they are, and that's where all the big fights are happening.
Well, that's where all the most, it's kind of, it's the biggest company.
Okay.
Because there's another, this is where, down the rabbit hole we go. Okay, there's another company that started, I want to say 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago? I want to say it's 2 years ago, called AEW. There's a gentleman by the name of Tony Khan who has been financing it. And they
what is
have
AEW? American?
All Elite Wrestling.
All Elite. Okay.
Yes, which is a reference to one of the groups in the promotion.
Oh.
That calls themselves the Elite.
Ah, okay. Fair enough.
So,
and Tony Khan, that's an unfortunate name, or is it? Okay.
He is related to, I forgot who his daddy is, but his dad owns the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they own a soccer team as well. Like, they've got silly money.
Yeah. This sounds like he has absurd, just crazy cash. So, okay, so they just started a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And do they have stars as well? Like, is there rising stars in both?
This is a point of contention with wrestling fans, the wrestling fans that are left, because the wrestling fans now we're very particular. It's weird.
Okay.
But okay, so as far as creating these stars thing goes, what people have been complaining about with the WWE is that they're not paying attention to the fans to help create new stars, because it's a synergy. It's a synergy there. Again, just like comedy. If no matter how good you think your joke is, the general you, if people don't laugh, it's not funny, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if what people are trying to do is get over, and they're which is either be the most popular, the most hated, the most talked about. Okay. And every guy and gal on that show is trying to do that, and the fans' response is how you figure out who's getting over and who isn't.
Right.
But in the last, it's been the last few years. I want to say almost the last 10 or so. There's gaps in my watching, to be honest.
Sure.
It feels like the office, the company is fighting with the fans.
Oh, just try to force different characters instead of just let it sort of be organic and as weird as it's always been.
Right. Now, like, here's a great example. Any wrestling fan that hears this this is old news to them.
Okay.
I forgot what year it is. It was WrestleMania 30.
Okay.
The lead up to it. Okay. So about a year prior, or a few months prior, people started getting behind this gentleman named Daniel Bryan, who's more of an everyman. Like, if you saw him in the street, you'd be like, oh, that's a guy who works out. He's pretty athletic. You wouldn't think he's a professional wrestler, probably.
Okay.
Like, he's not very big,
right?
In the grand scheme of things.
Okay.
And it's not somebody he is not the type of person looking at him, is what I'm saying, physically. Okay. Not the type of person that usually gets that type of push.
Okay.
But
because he's just too sort of normal looking, or
kind of, that's part of it. But he's so good at his job, he connects with people.
Yeah.
He was an everyman, and he connected with people, and he's really good.
Yeah.
So people started getting behind him. Well, at the same time, there's this gentleman by the name of Roman Reigns, who's related to a gentleman you may have heard of by the name of Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And he's
The Rock.
Every bit. He looks like Roman Reigns looks like a freaking, like, he looks like an action figure. Like,
okay.
Big Samoan dude, like, just ripped all to shreds, long hair, he's handsome, he's fast, he's strong, he's good and he comes from the Samoan family, which they know what they're doing when it comes to the wrestling business. So, and he looks the part.
Yeah.
So Vince sees him, and he's like, I got to push that guy, right? Mm-hmm. So both Roman the plan was to have Roman win the Royal Rumble, which is a whole nother thing. It's the winner of that gets the main event spot. Okay. Is supposed to get the main event spot at WrestleMania, which is the World Series.
Okay.
And But that's not what the people wanted.
Oh, they wanted Daniel.
They wanted Daniel Bryan.
Okay.
Like, it was so bad. Now, The Rock is almost untouchable. Like, he's genuinely, like, he can almost do anything. Like, he got caught with, John Cena called him out with having notes on his wrist for a promo. Called him out on TV, and people still did not turn against The Rock. Like, he is untouchable in wrestling. I want to make sure that this is
right.
That makes sense. Okay, so in this Royal Rumble leading up to WrestleMania 30, Daniel Bryan is in for a handful of minutes, maybe 5-10. I wish I had all the stats in front of me.
Okay,
but he gets thrown out pretty early. They're in Philadelphia too, which can be a hostile town.
And this is WrestleMania 30.
This is the Royal Rumble.
Oh, this is Royal Rumble. Okay.
Okay, so they throw Daniel Bryan out. People are not happy.
No.
Guess who wins? Guess who wins the Royal Rumble?
Is it Roman?
Yes.
Shocking. Only the fans who wanted Daniel to win.
Right, and when he wins, the people come unglued in the worst way. They start booing. It's from a PR standpoint, it's pretty bad as far as the reaction
because they're selling him as a good guy, and they should be cheering him.
Right, and The Rock comes out.
Yeah,
The Rock comes out to give him his, I'm this is my boy, and give him the give him the old give him the rub as they say.
Yep.
Fans weren't having it. They were happy to see The Rock. Like, he was in there. They're booing. They play The Rock's music. They cheer for a second. Then the people realize, wait a minute, he's about to put over Roman Reigns. So he raises his hand, and people are like, nah, player, and booed him out of the building. It was crazy. So eventually, and I may be getting something mixed up. I probably am.
No
but
worries.
Eventually,
I'm fascinated. It's always because this is. I think the last time I had somebody talk about wrestling was Open Mike Eagle, 4 or 5 years ago. So I haven't caught up with just the drama. We got to catch up. The soap opera that is wrestling. Go ahead.
And this is just between the fans and the company.
Right.
We haven't even got to the other stuff.
Right.
But so what? So they boo Roman out of the building. But anyway, heading up to Mania, another guy quits by the name of CM Punk. He may get mentioned later. And they have to, on the fly, no, it was Batista won that year. That's what it was.
Oh,
it was
okay.
Batista came back, Dave Batista from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, sure, Drax. Yeah.
Yes, he came back. It was him. He came back. He won, and people were hot. So, okay, so they had to shift around. The Roman Reigns thing, I think, was the year before, the year after.
Oh, okay.
It's all starting to run together, but all those things
Drax
happened.
was another guy who was backed up by the company, and and the audience was like, "But we like this Daniel Bryan guy."
They wanted Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
And they didn't want Batista, who was he was a wrestler first, went to the movies, and then, came back or whatever.
And he seems super charming and very, very likable.
As far as with my brief interaction, with my interactions with him, yes, he's always been good to me. That's about all I can say.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is he's cast as sort of a likable lug, and he does a very good job in the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes. So it was Batista wins. Daniel Bryan is, and the people are like, we're not having it. We're not having it.
Right, we want Daniel Bryan.
They boo Batista. Right. So between January and it's usually the week after. It's the week. The WrestleMania is the week between the NFC AFC Championship games and the Super Bowl. It's always the week before the Super Bowl.
Okay. And this is 2014. I looked it up. WrestleMania 30 was in 2014.
Okay.
So
he goes in WrestleMania, and then they basically they build up the story. He has to beat Triple H, who is one of the leaders of the office. Like in real life, he married the boss's daughter. That's a whole other thing. That's insanity.
I do vaguely remember that from a previous wrestling Dork Forest. Okay.
It is, yeah, that's insanity.
That's crazy, yeah.
And then, so he wrestles Triple H. He beats Triple H. Then he wrestles Randy Orton and Batista in the main event. and ends up winning, and the place goes crazy. It was like and the place went nuts. They were in New Orleans area. It was super dumb, I want to say. Yeah.
And so this is Daniel Bryan.
Right.
Okay, so
and
they eventually fold. They eventually fold to the fans, and they say, "Okay, you guys want Daniel Bryan? We'll let Daniel Bryan be the one." And so now he won WrestleMania.
He did. Unfortunately, he got injured right after that, so they had to take the belt off of him, which sucked.
Yeah.
But it feels like, but you would think though, after something like that happened and the goodwill that they built, that they would follow what the fans are kind of, try to ride the wave, but stick some plot twists in there. But it's wrestling. It's not supposed to be Shakespeare. It's not supposed to be complicated. Like, at the end of the day, most of the time, I want the good guy to win unless the bad guy is getting set up for another good guy down the road.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
It's really not that difficult.
Fair enough. I totally agree. So who are your favorite? I mean, are any of these guys still wrestling today?
Speaking of AEW, Daniel Bryan will be the rumor mill, the scuttlebutt, if you will, is that Daniel Bryan signed with AEW, which is a huge sign. It's the equivalent of I don't know, man. I only have sports references, and you're not a sports person. I don't think, are you?
But someone else will get whatever. But it's a big deal.
It's a big deal. It would be. It's for wrestling fans. For wrestling fans, it's the equivalent of Hulk Hogan going to WCW in the 90s, or in, I guess LeBron going to the Miami Heat or going to the Lakers. Like, it could be a game changer. Like, it could be, he's very popular still.
Let me just say, let me just weed off and just tell you that Brian Regan has a joke about, he is from Florida. He would like to start another basketball. The reason I know the Miami Heat is a basketball team is because Brian Regan said that he wants to buy another basketball team for Miami, and he doesn't want to call it the Heat. He wants to call it the Humidity. And that is the dumbest, funniest joke about basketball I've ever heard in my life. And then he said, and then I would like to sell that team because I don't need to own that team. But I would like to make that joke with a basketball team. Anyways, the Miami Humidity. Okay, but I've completely weeded off from who your favorite current
oh boy,
wrestlers.
Who are my favorite current wrestlers? Boy.
Like, have you ever pay-per-viewed?
Been on one or paid for one?
Paid for one.
Yes, paid for quite a few.
Oh,
don't do it anymore.
Right,
it's an old.
Is it an old platform? They're not doing it anymore, or? It's
an older model. AEW uses it. WWE is more of a content creator now. And
is it subscription?
They used to have their own channel, and now their content is on Peacock, which has been
that's the new NBC
results.
Streaming service, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Interesting. So pay-per-view is an older model.
I think, well, for wrestling it is.
Yeah.
I mean, UFC uses it, boxing still uses it, and they make a ton of money. I'm not saying it doesn't it's not used. I'm just saying for wrestling, which is the only one of those I pay that close attention to, it's become a more outdated model because WWE now has their, what were called pay-per-views are now bigger shows. I don't know what they call them. I still call them pay-per-views, but their big shows every month are on the streaming service. So if you have the streaming service, then you can watch it.
Oh, then you just get it as part of Peacock or whatever. So those are the big ones, though, right? Those are. Mm-hmm. Are any of those guys still wrestling? The Rock and Batista and like all the movie star guys?
No, the only movie star guy that's wrestling right now is John Cena.
Okay,
and he's on a part-time basis for obvious reasons.
What is? I don't know who he is. Even though
John Cena,
huge. I've nope.
Nothing good. No, yeah, you don't do music, right?
Right.
John Cena. I was just being silly. Anyway, John Cena is on. Let's see, he was in Bumblebee. Is the one I've seen him in. He was in He's in Suicide Squad.
Okay. Which I haven't seen yet, but and the first one I saw Birds of Prey. but I will. But the thing is I should know who. But I didn't know that John Cena was a wrestler until just now. But the guy looks like a walking fist. Is that the person I'm looking at? Is that
walking fist?
Is he just a giant? Is he this guy?
Yep, that's him.
Okay. The guy looks like, that guy just looks like a tank.
He's a little he's slimmed down now, but he's big.
I don't know why I thought he was a comic. Look at that dude. That guy's not. I don't know how funny that guy is, but is he funny?
It depends on your sense of humor, I guess.
I don't know anything about him, but so he does some wrestling.
Yes, he's also in F9, the last Fast and Furious movie.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, so he's in sort of big blockbustery kind of things, and are there who are your favorite guys working today?
Let me see. I like AJ Styles.
I meant to ask you this, by the way, before we got on, but I forgot to send you any sort of prep. So Agent Styles?
AJ Styles.
AJ Styles.
I'm a fan of him.
What's his jam?
He's actually just kind of a normal dude who does a lot of high flying stuff.
Oh, he's just super athletic, like acrobatic.
He's super athletic. And he's not the most. The most athletic guy is probably Ricochet, who is in the right circumstances is absolutely spectacular to watch. As is John Morrison. They're the athletes that they have now are miles ahead of the athletes of yesteryear, for sure. That's the one thing that wrestling has improved on, for sure. And there are people I could just run a list of people and from that. I'm a fan of AJ Styles, Shelton Benjamin, who's he was Brock Lesnar's roommate, and he is one of the best athletes ever to grace a wrestling ring. Like, it's ridiculous. So, and he's in his 40s.
His name's Shelton?
Shelton Benjamin, yeah.
Okay, and so when you say athletic, are they doing like? Because here's how little I know about wrestling, but they're jumping off the cords, off the ring thing, and so they're doing that. They're jumping into each other. They're jumping over each other.
Yeah.
Are they also what is the spectacular, what's the specky kind of stuff that they're doing? What's the spectacular physicality of an AJ Styles or a Shelton Benjamin? Or a guy with an awesome name like Ricochet. That's a great name, by the way. Good call.
Wow. I wish what did Ricochet? Ricochet did some, okay. This is a simple one to describe. Okay, so it was a match. It's a ladder match. Basically, the winner has to climb. You have to climb a ladder to get this suitcase off from that's suspended like 20 feet in the air. Okay, so you have to set up a ladder with 6 other dudes trying to kill you. So it's absolute car crash.
Right. That sounds
absolute
like that ninja crash. Game. Anyway, so that sounds like an obstacle course. What?
It's almost like a giant erector set or Legos or something, because people will set up ladders in different spots, and you're like, well, what were they going to do with that? And they'll come back to it and use it in a way that, if you've watched it enough, it's like, oh, I saw that coming. But they people come up with such unique ways to use ladders to beat each other up with, or fall into, and it's. Yeah.
Sure. They used to just pick up chairs from outside and then pretend to beat each other with the chairs.
Oh, that's real.
Yeah.
That's real. those are actual shots. Those
are actual chairs, but they train, right? Are they has anyone ever beat somebody to death in wrestling?
Not that I'm aware of.
Because I think that it's supposed to be theater, right? Like the physicality is real, but they're not using all of their strength. Like, they're using a lot of their strength to make it look real, but check the hit, right? Like they aren't actually trying to beat each other to death with a chair.
With the chair, okay. So with wrestling,
I feel like I'm talking to my grandmother. It's real, Jackie. It's so real, and parts of it are real, right?
it's more real than you think it is. The chair shots, like I'm not. They don't aim. There are no headshots anymore.
Okay.
Because we know about concussions. There are no more headshots.
Okay.
But I'll put it this way. People, if you hit somebody in a safe spot, in a safe space, or a safe spot, which would be like across the chest, across the back, things like that, areas like that where there's plenty of room to hit for your surface area.
Yeah.
You can almost go to town on somebody.
Okay.
And you're not going to permanently injure them. Like so a chair shot to the back is and depending on how much the guys like each other in behind the scenes, depends on how hard that shot's going to be. But they're going to hit them hard enough to make noise for sure.
Right.
Somebody my size swinging it, I'm swinging. I'm apologize early. I'm like, look, I'm not very big and I don't have the angle on this the way I should. So I'm going to swing this as hard as I can. Tuck. I'm going to aim for your back. As long as it's safe, I'm sorry, and I'm going to hit you with it, and then just swing, and that's what happens.
Have you done this? Is that what I mean, we barely know each other, so yes. I get to ask, do you wrestle? Have you done professional wrestling?
The answer to your first question is no, and I have done it, yes.
Okay. But so you have, is it like an open mic? How do you get into, how did you get into professional wrestling? Even nominally? Even hobby-wise?
I have it's a very interesting story. So.
Oh, we've got time, my friend. Yes.
I live in Jeffersonville, which is across the river from Louisville. Jeffersonville, Indiana, which is across the river from Louisville, which has always been a wrestling hub.
Okay.
And I used to live in, my parents live in Memphis, and I went down there after college, and I met a gentleman by the name of Ken Wayne. Okay. Ken Wayne is somebody I remembered watching on television as Nightmare Ken Wayne. So as soon as I saw him, I'm like, I know who you are. And he's like 5'7", 5'8", maybe, not a very big guy. I was like, that's interesting. Right. Mental note. And I always wanted to get in the wrestling business, but I didn't really know how. And he was like, it'll cost you X amount. And I'm like, I don't have that kind of money.
Right.
And
it costs money to get into wrestling. It
costs money to do any kind of learn any kind of trade, right?
Okay, fair enough. Okay, just for classes and lessons and kind of stuff. Okay, that makes more sense. It feels like buying it to get into stand up. But go ahead. I digress. Continue.
So a few years later, I come back to Jeffersonville, and I had it with the way corporate America works. Mm-hmm. Still feel that way, and
gave it a shot.
And I said, you know what? I've done everything I wanted. I graduated college. I did did high school the way they wanted me to. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to go be a professional wrestler.
Oh, fair enough.
And that's literally what I did. So I called. I make my decisions a lot that way. It's probably not healthy.
Just sweeping, what the heck?
It's like, you know what? I'm just going to completely change my life. What's the worst thing that could happen? If I die, it's not a big deal anyway. I won't live to regret it.
It sounds like you hit a wall, my friend, and I am very sorry to hear it. But you lived, so it's a kind of a triumph. So continue.
So I call Ken. And he's like, "Where are you at?" I'm like, "I'm in Louisville." He's like, or I'm in Jeffersonville. He's like, "Well, it's like Danny's school is right there. Why don't you call him?" Danny Davis, Nightmare Danny Davis, it was the tag team partner to Ken Wayne.
Okay.
And it was literally a mile from where they were training. Was literally a mile from my home.
Oh my gosh.
Or where I was living. I was living with a friend at the time.
Right.
So there's a lot of serendipitous things that happened. Right. Like at the time, this was a warehouse. It was like they had I missed the old Davis Arena. It was chairs on like two sides. One side, it was so small. You had two sides with chairs. One side was the concession stand basically, and then the other side was a wall.
Okay.
So you could only really work three sides.
Okay. So it was in a corner.
It was ridiculously small.
Okay.
So I go in there and I find out how much it costs. I pay my money and I just start training. And some very just weird things kept happening that's like, it's like the universe or whoever was like, open up like, if you really want it, here you go. Cause Nick Dinsmore, who was Eugene in the WWE, took a liking to me. He saw that he felt that I had an aptitude for it.
Okay.
And so he would take me and a couple other guys. We would do smaller shows in Cincinnati. Wrestled in like West Virginia in front of 20 people.
Working the road?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
that's so cool.
While working a regular job.
Yeah,
so,
of course. Stand up. It's just like
so. This
stand-up.
was so where OVW, where I started training, also happened to be the developmental territory of World Wrestling Entertainment.
Ah.
I was in a beginner class, which was to help. Which, looking back on it now and knowing what I know, was a big part of paying the bills for OVW.
Right. Of course.
That's how they kept the lights on for a long time, I'm sure.
Keep the doors open. Yeah.
Right. So I entered the beginner class, and I remember Nick said one day, he's like, "Hey, you want to come in one day? During the contract class is what they called it. During the contract class, I can watch some videos with him because Nick was training a lot of the contract guys at the time.
The contract guys are guys who have a contract.
They are those. They're basically AAA. They're basically AAA wrestlers. Okay. So basically, they're developing.
They're in skills. The system. They're in the system. Okay, fair enough.
Right.
Contract guys.
So, and they can come from anywhere. A lot of them have never wrestled before and stuff like that. So,
just like the sport. Just like the sport. Just want to come in. Sure.
Or they're like, "Oh, you're big.
Yeah.
You look like you turned heads in an airport. Come on in." So, needless to say, I was not a contract guy when I got there. No. But Nick had me come in to watch a tape of a match from some time, and I walk in, and there's this guy that's in the same class that I'm in, and he's sitting and watching as if he's part of the class. And I look, and I'm like, And it was one of those moments, and I'm sure you look at him and like, I know I'm better than he is.
Oh yeah.
I know I'm better than he is,
and he's acting as if, which will get him work. Yeah,
and he looks the part.
There.
He looks the part. He looks the part. So we go in, we watch the video, and I get Nick's awesome, and a lot of his advice goes right over my head because I don't understand what the heck he's talking about. And at the end, I look at it and turn to him. I say, "So when do I start?"
Yeah.
He's like, I'll see you Monday.
Oh, there you go. You just gotta ask sometimes.
So I just because I was gonna dare him to tell me why this other guy was better than me. I was hoping he'd call my bluff, to be honest, because I'm like, if he's in there, come on now. I was just gonna go after it.
Right.
So between from this to I'm in the class with I'm trying to think if there's any names that we would know now. Probably we did do some stuff with Big Boss Man, but he wasn't training. Literally, obviously he was coming down to help us.
Okay.
Because
there's both sides, right? I mean, obviously there's people coming up, and then there's people who are sort of aging out of being able to do it all and just going into coaching and stuff like that, sort of.
There's probably more of that now than there was then. Like back then, when I mentioned Boss Man, he was coming down to rehab because he was off. He wasn't on the road anyway because he got hurt.
Okay.
And coming in, one to check out the guys that the new guys. Of course, that's the other reason he's there. But also to get some ring rust off before he gets back on the road.
Okay.
So
yeah.
So they open up a new warehouse, but it seats like 500 people. And
nice.
OVW is still there to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first night that we opened, it was a packed house. After the show, everybody leaves and stuff, and nobody stayed. Just guys didn't think. I genuinely think that's what it was, and almost nobody stayed to help clean up the arena.
Oh.
And I I was working a night job at the time, but I hated it, so I really didn't care if I didn't go and I was about to get fired. Didn't care. So
you're like, I might as well stay here and work.
So so I helped sweep up.
Hanging out, I bet you hanging out, huge part of the wrestling gig as well, as much just like stand up.
Yes,
just
yes, it is.
Squeaky wheel. You're like, oh, okay. So you hung out and helped break it down.
We cleaned up broom,
sure.
Just cleaned up the da. And the next week, I can't remember. The next week, Jim Cornette, who is the booker, he's the guy who writes the show, for lack of a better way of putting it. He sets up all the matchups, and he's the one with the vision for the show.
Okay.
Is how to put it. Because if I understand the way he does it correctly, way I understand him correctly, my understanding, not him doing it correctly, is he'll book to the show, like the big show, right?
Yeah.
Like our pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Our version. And then he'll write the show backwards from where we are today. So today, this needs to happen to set up this. So to set up this, so by the time we get to the show, that people are ready to come see the big clash.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
That's what he does.
It's I was fascinated. I've had Mike Schmidt, I think Ron Funches, and I think Open Mike Eagle were the 3 episodes I've done about wrestling.
Okay.
And every time it's fascinating to me, the writers. So what was this guy's name? Mike?
Jim Cornette.
Oh, Jim Cornette.
Oh, are you going to have a ball with him?
Okay, Jim Cornette.
He is quite the
well, because
he's quite the character.
Right.
Personality is the word I'm looking for.
Right, and it's the soap opera guy, right? It's the person who's writing the drama and the storyline. That you're like, you have to have this the character is doing this so that this person can, we got to wrestle. This isn't going to be a wrestling match. It's going to be a war. And, that kind of thing.
Kind of. And I guess I kind of flinch at, because I was trained, like the training I got was from Jim Cornette or Rip Rogers. Any wrestling fans are going to know these names. Rip Rogers, Danny Davis, Nick Dinsmore, Lance Storm, Al Snow, like guys who have been everywhere. So I've got a little bit of everything in there. So there's sometimes that when I hear things, I'm like, okay.
Like, so like sort of a caricature,
like character, for instance.
Yeah.
And it's said a lot more now than it used to be. But when wrestling really works, when a personality gets over, it is because it's normally a turned up version. The Undertaker's an exception. It's usually a turned up version of the real life person. So The Rock is Dwayne Johnson all amped all the way up versus what he's probably amped up to 10. That's Dwayne Johnson amped up to 30. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So like there are the people that you really that are really popular usually. There's an aspect of the real personality that's coming through.
Okay,
and
so
that's why character's a little weird,
right? Because
at the same time,
it's not so much fictionalized as just made bigger.
Yes, if all things being equal, it should be. That's how you'll find other people at its best. In my opinion, that's what it is.
Okay, I love that. Yeah. So coming up, and you're meeting all these sort of like the power behind the throne guys, like all the people who create these, these characters and stuff. How long did you work? You're not still doing it, right?
No, no. I did it on and off for about 8 years.
Oh wow, that's respectable.
The biggest part, probably the most dense part of it is my first 3 years in the business. Because from that cleaning up thing that I was telling you about, Jim Cornette told me the very next week he saw me. We hadn't spoken 2 words to each other. He'd seen some amateur matches, I would assume.
Yeah.
And he said, "Go buy a tux." I'm like, okay. And in like 3 months later, I made my television debut as God, what was my name? Morris the Butler. For Rene Dupree, the French aristocrat.
Oh my God. I wish you had been able to write your own character. So, I mean, the thing is like I've talked to you now for 2.5 hours. No, 1.5 hours. Because we did your podcast. By the way, I am talking with Demond Thompson, you guys. And Demond Thompson has a podcast called Demond Does. DEMOND. DOES. And it's at Demond Does on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the things. Demond Does has a podcast where he asks people 6 questions. Andy Ashcraft did it, and then I did it, and then Andy's podcast partner, Shlomo Scher, did it. So a lot of people, Shlomo Scher was on the episode at Dork Forest a couple of weeks ago talking sandcastles. Very weird. Very lovely. Anyway, and he also has a debate show called DisputedPod.com. Anyway, so it was, you were a butler? That was the conceit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Now that's where the caricatures come from.
Well, and it can be, like, are there any, like I was talking to Ron Funches about the how it's sometimes hard to like, you love wrestling, but sometimes it's hard to like wrestling because of how sexist and racist it can be. Or, in Ron Funches' terms, how racist and sexist it could be. In either direction, there's trouble. And
yes.
So the writing, I wish that there were... Is it because most of the writers are straight white guys?
It's even worse in wrestling, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
All the writers, as far as I know, in the 2 big companies are all white dudes. What makes it worse for WWE is there's really only one person that you have to entertain, and that's Vincent Kennedy McMahon. And he is, I want to say, he's in his 70s. He's in his mid-70s.
Okay.
So he's in his mid-70s and has not been outside of his wrestling bubble since the 70s.
Yeah, I swear to God,
so
back in the 70s.
You can only imagine how his...
I swear I promise you that in the 1970s, as a child, I was told that racism and sexism was going to die out with these old dinosaurs, not knowing that there was a 35-year-old asshole sitting on deck, warming up with a couple of donuts and their baseball bats. And you're like, I don't like you. I was told that you were not going to exist. And so 77, that guy was alive during the civil rights. I mean, it's not like that guy was born in 1912, that guy was born in 1945, right? Or 1950. No, not 1950, but I mean, whatever. So what you're saying is that Vincent Ken McMahon might not be a super enlightened dude.
There's that part of me, and also he is a promoter and businessman. So he may see part of it is his own vision on things and what he sees wrestling is. And he really, he's wanted to distance his company away from the term wrestling. Like he created the term sports entertainment, and, all the wrestlers are superstars, and, he's done a lot of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, I think he's a promoter, and part of it is his own, like, storylines and stuff. Part of it, that is him. Those are things that he finds funny. Those are things that he finds interesting.
Yeah.
And there are I don't know what the writing room looks like, but I remember when I was the short time I was there were no people of color.
Okay.
In the writing rooms.
Right.
Now, and in their defense, they do, guys are encouraged to pitch stuff all the time, whether they're going to listen to it or not.
Right.
Right.
I mean, well, and the whole thing is, I don't know if you saw any women in those writing rooms either, but there's sometimes there's one or two, and those are people that are willing to suffer the idiots around them because they love something so much, and you're just like, well, I guess I got to work with these idiots, but I like the thing. This is the thing I want to do, and so you sit in that room, which makes it better for the next person
Right.
But there's just the voice is very small compared to the larger voice.
Right. And everything everything runs through Vince. So even if you have something enlightened, if he doesn't get it,
right?
Like pitching stuff to him, like I'm maybe getting ahead of myself. Pitching stuff to him, at least for me, is, and I didn't, obviously I wasn't there that long, but I was like, what's the worst thing he's going to do is fire me? Sure did.
Oh shit!
He didn't do it personally.
No.
I mean, everybody gets fired eventually. It's wrestling.
Yeah. It's wrestling. I suppose everybody got to move on. So,
right. But I pitched it in a way that. And I tried to pitch things in terms that he understood from his own product. You know what I mean? So, like, I worked with this gentleman named Ernest the Cat Miller, and Vince saw him as more of a James Brown type guy. So he wanted him to dress up like James Brown. So yes, so they had me wearing a wig and a tuxedo and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I immediately thought of the Honky Tonk Man. For those who don't know, the Honky Tonk Man in the 80s, early 90s was an Elvis. And basically an Elvis impersonator wrestler.
Okay.
So he would come out. He had the slick hair, and you want to see the Honky Tonk Man sing. You want to see me dance. And he was originally supposed to be a good guy, and the people booed him. And back when they were paying attention, paying attention to the fans, they put Jimmy Hart with him, and he wound up being the longest running Intercontinental Champion. But I thought the Elvis comparison to the James Brown comparison was apt. And then I'm his Jimmy Hart, and I can do different things that he can't do. And that like stuff like that. So that was the way
you tried to pitch it.
Right.
And it didn't fly, and they were like, no. No, we want you to. They didn't see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And he didn't really give me a response anyway, from what I remember. I mean, it was 15 plus years ago. So. Right.
And it's so. So you're working. But the thing is so you're doing essentially what I would call in stand-up sort of B rooms and weekend rooms that aren't sort of full room. They aren't the bigs, right? Did you get? What was the biggest venue that you got to play? Was it kind of neat?
My biggest claim to fame, other than I have been beat up by, if I'm not mistaken, 8 former WWE champions.
There you go.
Is that I was in the Royal Rumble in 2004.
Okay.
So that was my biggest audience. Yeah.
Fair enough. The Royal Rumble. And then, so when you say you were beat up by these guys, and you know what that means as far as physically, do you still have aches and pains from this thing? You know how good.
Not as much as somebody who did it full time for years would.
Right.
It I forgot where I got this source from, and it may be completely phony.
Okay.
So this could be
salt.
wrestling.
Grain of
this
salt.
could be wrestling scuttlebutt for all I know.
Fair enough.
For all I can remember. But every bump, which is I want to say they're talking about flat back, which is falling straight back.
Okay.
Is the equivalent of a small car crash.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And
I
then
think somebody else told me that too.
And then when you watch a match now, not every there's been a tendency, there's a trend for longer matches for some reason. Not that every match doesn't need that, but even in a 5 to 7 minute match, you watch how many bumps guys take now.
Yeah.
And and guys are smaller, they're leaner, because they have to look like action figures, because that's what Vince likes. Let's be clear.
Okay.
There are a few exceptions, but there aren't very many.
Right.
So they don't have a lot of meat, and then the style is more athletic.
Right.
It breaks down the body a lot faster.
Yeah.
It's like I probably as a wrestler would have fit in now-ish, but I don't know if I'd have wanted to do it just because of the things that they're doing now. It's like, I don't know.
Right. I remember the most athletic thing I saw was the high flyers, the Jumpin' Jim Brunzell and the little guy. The Jumpin' Jim Brunzell was a bigger dude, and his partner was a skinnier kind of dude, and he would sort of sometimes jump off of Jim Brunzell. And but they both probably went into management or whatever. And so if the matches are 5 to 7 minutes, what's a good length of like how long? If they're running longer now, are they longer than 5 to 7?
Sometimes. I'm referring to AEW more than WWE. I mean,
Okay.
WWE, they have 2 matches that go 2 or 3 minutes. They have matches that go 5 to 7, and they're basically done like TV segments.
Okay, so they try to run them so they can run commercials or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have about 10 minutes left here. Let's talk about, like, these days, how do you watch wrestling? And how much wrestling do you watch? And is there favorite stuff happening? Like, what's fun? Like, if someone wanted to get into it, like watching it, not doing it.
Watching it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I consume a lot of wrestling now through YouTube. A lot of people will watch clips, but I actually, for the bigger show, for the weekly shows, because Raw is on Mondays and it's 3 hours.
Okay.
And then if every show is at least 2 hours long, and that's a lot. That's a long commitment, and I got little kids.
Right.
So I'll watch.
You're raising people.
Yes, I got other stuff to do.
Yeah.
And so there are YouTube shows that will condense it down to 20 minutes on what happened and that kind of thing, and that's how I usually from week to week, and then I'll watch matches if I hear about something really cool.
What's a good YouTube channel to watch the condensed versions? Because I would watch it for 20 minutes. There's no way I'm watching 2 or 3 hours of wrestling. Hell, the Olympics was hard for me to watch in real time. I was like, is there a fast forward? Okay.
Let's get to the final 2 minutes. Come on.
Yeah, I'd like to see the last 2 minutes of any basketball game. Yes, I will watch that. Anyway, but so on YouTube, am I just YouTube Googling Raw?
Yes, and that'll usually bring up clips.
Mm-hmm.
Raw, SmackDown, or the WWE shows.
Okay.
Dynamite is the AEW show, and they have Dynamite, and then Dark, which is a YouTube exclusive. I believe that's correct.
Oh, so you have to subscribe?
No.
Okay.
All those are free.
They're totally free. Yeah.
All those are well, with your subscription or whatever.
Yeah.
What I've been watching with a buddy of mine, we've kind of started hanging out again, and every Monday it's now just wrestling and chilling.
Yeah.
And we've been watching some smaller shows. One's called Impact, which has been around a lot longer than you expect. It's been over 20 years now.
Okay. And that's sort of an indie? They're indie fights, yes, or indie wrestling matches?
It's like if we took, let's say, AEW and WWE are 1 and 2, and then you've got indie, and those are national level.
Right.
Indie level is like basically regional. Is usually regional or in small handful of places or something like that. That Impact is closer to that. NWA is closer to that right now.
Okay.
Ring of Honor is another good one as well, and one that me and my buddy watch now because I don't know. We love it. It's called MLW. I want to say it's Major League Wrestling.
Okay. Oh, that's fun though. Right. And so you just on a Monday night, you guys, is that also on YouTube? So you just like sort of hang out, like have dinner or have a couple of drinks or something and just put it on the TV and just watch wrestling and go, who is that guy? Like, are you seeing newer guys come up?
In MLW, for sure, they actually cycle through guys that you've heard of as well. And you're going to see people that more people that I was not aware of are going to be in Ring of Honor.
Okay.
Impact has a mixture, but they have more guys that I'm not familiar with. But from there, it scales.
Yeah. That's cool. So I like the idea of these smaller kind of things. And have you gone to see any live stuff in the last couple of years?
Not since the pandemic.
Right. Not the last couple. My apologies. Like, yeah. How about the last 5 years? It's.
I think this is gonna sound so snotty, but I really don't want to go to another wrestling show if I have to pay for it. I feel like It would be like you pay it, and we are not. I am not comparing resumes, by the way. But it would be like asking you to buy a ticket to a comedy show. Is how I feel about it. But personally,
and that I've had that feeling forever. Like 8 years into doing stand up, there was no way I wanted to pay for stand up. I would say the last time I paid to see a stand up show would have been I saw Stephen Wright in 1987.
Wow.
So that would have, and I didn't want to pay for it, but I kind of wanted to see what 45 minutes of one-liners looked like. So that's why I paid for it, and it was fascinating. I was like, oh, they're not all one-liners. So just so you know, Stephen Wright also will sort of weave some things together so that it can mix up the timing so that you enjoy the entire time. You don't have to just start, stop like a crazy person, which is what I imagined it would be, not realizing that Stephen Wright was a professional. He's fine. Turns out he's an adult man, not a hobby, and he does it for a living. So don't sweat it. Go see Stephen Wright. But yeah, so you don't really want to pay to see wrestling because of the history of it. So
well, that and I usually know somebody in the locker room. I still should know some people. So I'm like, or I know somebody who does. So I'm like, hey man, so I've been to a WWE show. It's the first one. My daughter was 4.
Okay.
That was a mistake, but it was fun.
Okay.
we were in the second row. Which was great.
Little? Was she too little?
I think so, the show starts at 8, and her bedtime is at like 9:30, so she's already that's already witching hour time. You know what I mean?
Right. So the yelling and the screaming, it's not going to really blend in. And you're booing at the wrong time. And she's like, I just want to go to bed.
She just would not sit still because she knew she would fall asleep. So there was like, Georgia, leave those people alone. Come back here. Hey, baby, leave it.
We're trying to.
But what's weird is like she hid my, like we were in the second row.
Wow.
Like, so we're right there and on the hard cam side. So when they pose in our direction. Mm-hmm. And, I remember she was in my lap a lot of times, just facing my chest because it was loud and people are crunk and everything else, and it's like, and I was kind of disappointed. I'm like, I really wanted her to enjoy it or watch it or something. It was just frustrating. And the next day she was like, oh, I had so much fun. This person was like, Charlotte Flair was awesome. She wore blue and I'm like, you had your face in my chest when she came out. Like, how did you see this?
She was present at some level that you did not notice because you were like, I hope you're having a good time. You're just, and you're worried about her having a good time. It was hard to have, but it'll be great when they're like 10 or 11, when the kids are, 8. That seems more of a time to bring kids to see the crazy sporting event, the theatrical sporting event.
Yes.
And yes. Do the kids watch on Mondays with you and your buddy?
No, we go to his house after the kids are in bed.
It's a solo moment where you get to have friend time.
Right. They do watch the pay-per-views with me, the special events and stuff. Like my son, my son loves the Lady Wrestlers.
We didn't even talk about the Lady Wrestlers, and we're at an hour. But I was I was curious if there were because sometimes there are there WWE Lady Wrestlers?
Yes, and there are some really, really good ones. Okay. I may be hyperbolic here, but this is and it has a lot. It has ways to go too, but
sure.
This has been a golden age for women's wrestling. They just Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. The WrestleMania was 2 nights this year, and Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair became the first African Americans to main event WrestleMania. Male or female. And they were women. Male or female.
Okay.
And a couple years ago, Becky Lynch, Ronda Rousey, and Charlotte Flair were the first females to main event WrestleMania, period.
Wow.
There's still a lot to go because it's still run by a bunch of white dudes.
Because Vince is, he's probably has the blood of babies going into him, so he's going to live for another 20 years.
His mom is still alive.
Oh my God. That's actually bad news for wrestling. But in other news, I got to have you back just to talk about the women's side then.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been listening and talking with Demond Thompson. And Demond Thompson has a podcast called Demond Does. Demond Does. Demond Does. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Find him. And super fun, where he asks people the same 6 questions. Anything that I'm not plugging that you want to plug, Devon?
Just Disputed. We live stream every 2 weeks. And
fun.
It'll be our next episode will be on the 19th. I'm not really, I'm
gonna
go ahead and say
the 24th. So August 24th.
Okay, so it'll have already happened at that point. And the
so the one after that will be the
matchup
first.
will be Axel Foley and Axel Foley versus Mike Lowry. So Bad Boys versus Beverly Hills Cop versus Bad Boys.
Oh, okay. And that'll just be available on YouTube afterwards, or just if they go to disputedpod.com, they'll find all the links to all that stuff.
Yes, Disputed Pod will have everything.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for doing the show, Demond. That was so fun.
Thank you.
And Rangers, you know the rules out there. Take care of each other.
My hat, my hat, my hat. They're dancing around my hat, my hat, my hat, my hat. Well, what do you think of that? If it looks like a Mexican hat dance and it sounds like a Mexican hat dance, it's most likely a Mexican hat dance. So take off your hat and let's dance.
Yay! Oh my God. Why don't we just call that as the end of the show?